So many of you will remember that Vanderbilt kicker Sarah Fuller was a member of the women's soccer team at Vanderbilt. And this past fall, they turned Sarah Fuller coming in to kick a couple of extra points into one of the woke super stories of the entire universe. This idea that Sarah Fuller, oh my God, she's saving Vanderbilt. Otherwise, they would never be able to kick any extra points. None of this made sense, right? And it was like if you mentioned any of the facts that pointed out that this was a sham and that this was just designed to kind of draw attention without actually being legitimate, people were like, oh, it's so sexist of you to even point that out. But I was like, wait a minute. They have a kicker who is attempting field goals. They have a punter. You're telling me that the kicker that is kicking 40-plus yard field goals isn't able to jog onto the field and actually kick extra points, that this is necessary? This is a total sham, and more power to it if it's just being treated as a way to get attention. But she's addressing the team at halftime. She's talking about the effort and the intensity, and people were acting. They named her the SEC Player of the Week on special teams. People are acting like this is real, when in reality, it's a total sham. And some people got mad at me. People were like, how dare you? Why would you even share that opinion, right? Like, because blue check marks on Twitter all have the exact same opinion. So this won't get hardly any attention anywhere else. And the amount of stories like these that almost receive no attention but for Outkick continue to grow. Sarah Fuller, Vanderbilt women's soccer goalie, who has supposedly got such an amazing leg, is such an incredible soccer player. She got benched by the Vanderbilt women's soccer team in the biggest game of the year, their NCAA tournament game against Penn State, for a freshman goalie on the Vanderbilt women's soccer team. So all season, like we heard, oh, she's so great. She's such an incredible kicker. She's amazing. They didn't even use her in the most important game of the year in the sport that she actually plays and is on scholarship to play. And we're supposed to believe that she is necessary for the Vanderbilt football team? This is why so many of these stories, if you ask any questions at all, just immediately blow up. My first thought is, if you want to just kind of make a joke, Vanderbilt should have been using this other kicker, right? She's not even the best goalie on her team. Why was Vanderbilt using her? She's not even the best women's soccer player they could have picked, because she wasn't even starting in the most important game of the year that they played in Vanderbilt women's soccer. And by the way, this is not a shot at her. She was used as a way to make a statement that had nothing to do with the meritocracy of sports. See, one of the primary reasons why I love sports so much is so much of American life today is total BS. But there is an authenticity to sports that is almost impossible to replicate anywhere else. Best man or best woman wins. You want to prove that you're the fastest person? Line up and run and prove it. Now, obviously, we can get into all different sorts of steroids and everything else, but let's pretend that everybody's clean at the Olympics. You can find out who the fastest man or the fastest woman in the entire world is, because we got a track and you have to prove it time after time after time. If you are the best kicker in the NFL or the best kicker in college football, over time, you will prove that based on your ability to make kicks. But don't sell me on the idea that a stunt is real life, okay? And I'm okay with stunts when it's acknowledged that it's a stunt. I don't have a problem when a kid is at a spring game and you decide that you want to let the kid score a touchdown, right? This is kind of a feel-good moment that might happen in a spring game where you're not keeping score and an 8-year-old kid gets a football and he runs around the corner and the team lets him score. I think that is really kind of awesome, honestly. And that is not making a mockery of the sport itself, because it's not a real contest. But when you bring somebody in a real contest and try to sell us on the idea that this is a remarkable achievement because nobody else could do what this person is doing, and everyone out there with a functional brain knows that this is not the case, I feel like we live in a fundamentally artificial universe when almost no one else will say anything because they're so afraid that people might be mean to them on Twitter. So that's why this is a story. Sarah Fuller is supposedly such an amazing kicker that she saved Vanderbilt by coming in and kicking 2 extra points, which is a total lie. But she wasn't even good enough in her primary sport, according to the coach who's theoretically trying to win that sport, to even start in that game against Penn State, I believe it was, in the NCAA tournament. How can you sell me on her talent being so impressive and so incredible in the world of college football, which is what all the blue checks tried to do, when she's not even good enough to start in the most important game of the season on her team, and she gets benched? She's not even the best at the sport that she actually plays, and we were being sold the lie that she was the best kicker available on Vanderbilt's campus. It was a lie. It was a sham. It was a stunt. And some people say, well, why do you have to call it out? Because competition, what I believe in is, in games that matter, what you owe every person out there is you're going to compete your absolute hardest to try to win the game. You may not win. You're going to coach the absolute hardest to try to win the game. That's what competition is to me. That's how you end up with success in life, is being able and willing to compete as hard as you can every single day. Sometimes you're going to win, sometimes you're going to lose, but the lessons of putting yourself out there in athletics translates into so many other different parts of life. And we all got sold a bill of goods, and Outkick was one of the only places that was willing to raise this as a bill of goods. And I bet you won't hear anywhere else all those guys out there slinging the story about her being the best kicker on Vanderbilt. Will they even mention that she got benched from her own women's soccer team? I bet not. Facts matter. So does truth. So does honesty. Competition at the highest echelon is the absolute apex of what we should aspire to in all sports.